Minister, I am really deeply concerned about the continuing shortage of Vyvanse in Australia. It's a medication utilised by many people with ADHD. Has the Australian government made a direct appeal to the American government to increase the manufacturing amount, allowing more Vyvanse to be exported to Australia?
All right, I might seek some advice from the department on that for you, Senator Steele-John.
Yes, I'm just wondering if Professor Lawler is here from the TGA, who is the expert in this area.
Thank you, Senator. Professor Tanya Lawler, Deputy Secretary of the Health Product Regulation Group, which includes the Therapeutic Goods Administration. Thank you for the question, Senator. I recall clearly our conversation last time regarding the shortage of Vyvanse, and it is unfortunate that the global shortage does continue. This is predominantly a result of manufacturing issues. There continues to be shortages, and those shortages currently include 30, 40, 50 and 60 milligram dosages. Yep. The expected shortage resolution dates for those are the 7th of March for the 30 and 50 milligram dosages, the 19th of April for 60 and the 30th of April for the 40 milligram. As previously highlighted, the TGA publishes advice for patients, carers and healthcare professionals, and we do work closely with the supplier, which is Takeda Pharmaceuticals Australia, to monitor deliveries and the capacity for emergency supply. One of the challenges is that the TGA does not have the authority under the Therapeutic Goods Act to compel or oblige sponsors to increase production, but we do have strong working relationships with wholesalers, suppliers, health professional organisations and jurisdictions to ensure that we, as best we're able, mitigate regional or geographical stockpiling, and also provide advice to prescribers in various ways, such as particularly for Vyvanse, to ensure that priority is given to individuals who have already started on these medications, that they be continued.
Minister, people with ADHD have been without this critical medication for so long now, and it is doing real harm. This is an emergency in our community. I came to estimates in October and asked for the dates expected for the resolution of these shortages, and Professor Lawler informed me at the time that there was a belief that the shortages would be resolved by the 31st of December. Professor Lawler has just informed myself and yourself that the earliest date for any of these categories of shortage to be resolved is now March, and for some people April. Has your government reached out to the American government and expressed to them the urgent need for their manufacturing capability to be increased to resolve this literal emergency that we're experiencing in the community?
I can certainly take that question on notice for you, Steele-John, Senator Steele-John, in terms of Minister Butler. Senator's last question.
Thank you.
In terms of direct conversations with the US.
Well, yes, because, I mean, imagine if my wheelchair was the product of a pill I took multiple times a day, and that pill was not available due to a supply chain issue in the United States, and while I couldn't get it, I had to crawl around on the floor, and now I'm being told that I wasn't be able to get my wheelchair pill until April. That is literally the situation that so many ADHDers are in. This medication is their form of assistive technology. And it is urgent that we resolve this supply line shortage for them. So please do take that on notice. And on ADHD, can I ask you, the ADHD report created by the Community Affairs References Committee was provided to the government last November, and we are overdue in a response to that report from government. One of the recommendations of the report is to make prescribing practices more consistent across Australia, particularly across the states and the territories. Has the government made any progress on standardising these prescribing rules nationally?
Senator Steele-John, that was tabled in December. We still have 3 months, which is the end of this month.
November.
Okay, November. So we still have time to report in terms of that
We're
inquiry.
now in February.
But I will take, that's right, I will take that question along with the previous one on notice for the Minister. But can I just add It's incredibly distressing to have heard your particular personal story there. As you know, I have a son in a wheelchair and I know exactly what that's like. And I certainly will, for all of those who are listening, and obviously that you represent, I will certainly get those answers back to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Senator Rusty.
Returning briefly to the government's response and progress of the recommendations of the ADHD report, has the Health Minister raised the issue of ADHD law reform at a national meeting of health ministers yet? Because they happen rather regularly, so I'm hoping that this has been raised.
So, Senator, I'm just pausing some of the discussions at the Health Ministers' meeting are confidential. We can take that on notice to say whether it's raised. I don't recall it coming up as a formal agenda item on a Health Ministers' meeting, but I'll take on notice whether it's been discussed with Health Ministers at some point.
Okay. Now, returning to the Vyvanse shortage and the impact that is having on Australians, there are a number of steps the government can take to ease the impact of the shortage until global supply lines can be restored. Has the government made any progress on enabling everyone around Australia who needs these medications to access e-scripts for Vyvanse so that it is easier to move between pharmacies when you're experiencing the impact of this shortage?
Senator, e-scripts are available around the country at the moment and can be used by practitioners who are prescribing medicines that are available under the PBS or that are not on the PBS and filled by pharmacies around the country.
So is your evidence to the committee today that Vyvanse, being very specific here, that Vyvanse is a medication that you can receive an e-script for?
So I'd need to check whether or not it is on the PBS at the moment.
It's on the PBS, yes.
Well, then yes, it would be available.
But
unless it's one of the medicines not available for electronic prescriptions because of safety reasons that have been recommended by the Commission for Safety and Quality.
I think what your colleague is about to do is come to the table and talk to us about the impact of...
Well, no, I just was going to clarify that electronic scripts cover both prescriptions that are on the PBS as well as private scripts. As Ms Shakespeare's indicated, if it's a controlled medicine, there are additional steps that the prescriber needs to take, but they are still available as e-scripts.
And can you outline for the committee, just so that we are aware, what are those additional steps that you need to take?
So I'd have to have a look at it because it's subject to state and territory regulation, so it's different in every state. But there are just additional considerations that prescribers need to undertake. I don't have them off the top of my head. But what e-scripts have done is made that much more simpler for prescribers.
Yep. But there are still those additional steps that need to be taken, which makes it harder to get an e-script.
I would highlight, if I might, Senator,
Yeah.
there are certain real-time prescription monitoring provisions within a number of states. And because of that variability, and just wanting to be absolutely clear on this, it might be perhaps better if we bring that back to you, if you're comfortable with that, Senator.
Well, you can. I'm pretty familiar with them, having been on the inquiry. And to be honest with you, this is the second time we've had an exchange about Vyvanse, and the second time Health Department officials, and we're looking at the cream of the crop, have come to the table and not really been sure how ADHD medications are handled across Australia, when you really should know that as a Schedule 8 drug and a drug of this type, there are a number of barriers to getting an e-script. This is not... I'm not talking about a bespoke medication taken by 10 people in regional WA and Queensland. There are hundreds of thousands of people that rely on these medications. Your knowledge base of these processes should be better than it is, so that when I ask you what are you doing to make it easier, you can give the community a more fulsome answer than I'll take the basics on notice.
And Senator, I'm fully cognizant, as I mentioned previously, of the challenges individuals face, particularly those moving across state and territory boundaries, jurisdictional boundaries, the challenges they face. It's less an issue of the basics and more an issue of the complex interjurisdictional interactions that we want to be absolutely clear with you.
Which, in the case of this medication, are the basics. Like, that's... Anyway, please bring that information back to us next time. Again, this is an emergency for people. My final question on this is, as I have referenced, in relation to the shortage of supply, we know that this is a medication which is experiencing this supply chain shortage. However, it's regulated in the Australian context as if it is a dangerous medication, when It's very clear that it is a safe and effective slow-release medicine. What steps is the government taking in the last 3 months, since this was made very clear to you in the inquiry, to downgrade Vyvanse from being considered a Schedule 8 drug?
Thank you for the questions, Senator. I would highlight that certainly the formulation of individual medicines are a feature in the scheduling of medication. You would be aware, I suspect, that this is a medication that has significant therapeutic as well as non-therapeutic effects on individuals. It's very carefully titrated by specialists to find the right dose. The issue of scheduling of a medication is not simply down to the formulation or the pharmacokinetics of a single tablet. It's also down to the fact that these are dispensed in 30 tablet lots, and in that volume they are potentially open to misuse, abuse or significant effects. So we do regularly review the scheduling of medications. The current view is that Schedule 8 is an appropriate schedule for this medication.
When is it due to be reviewed?
I don't have that in front of me, Senator.
Could you come back before the end of the day and give, surely there's a date somewhere in a computer?
I will get that information for you, Senator.
Because our committee found that the way it is regulated and considered is outdated, and that is exacerbating the shortage that people are currently experiencing. Can I just ask, before I rotate the call back, has a draft report been prepared by the Health Department, a draft response for the Minister in relation to the ADHD report? Has the Department prepared that?
Thank you, Senator. Bronwyn Field, First Assistant Secretary, Mental Health and Suicide Prevention Division. A draft report is being prepared and going through approval processes currently.
So you're preparing the draft report at the moment? It hasn't yet been transmitted to the Minister?
It has been transmitted and government's going through government approval
Considering
process.
the draft you provided?
Yes.
When did you provide on what date did you provide the draft to the Minister?
I would have to take that on notice, Senator.
Can you please come back before the end of the session today with that answer? Thank you. Have you also prepared a draft response for the government in relation to the Senate Select Committee into dental care in Australia? Into the provision of dental care in Australia?
Senator, I will have to wait for another colleague.
Can anybody answer that?
We'll have to take it on notice.
Can you also just send
we'll
some
come
emails
back
and
to
come
that.
back to the table with that
Absolutely,
information?
Senator.
Thank you. I appreciate your time. Thank you, Minister.
Chair, can I just make one comment about the various questions about preparing draft responses from the department?
Yes, Mr. Conley.
I'm sure everyone on the table knows it, but it is important to highlight that we do provide draft responses. There often is a number of iterations between the department and the government and ministerial officers in an entirely appropriate way. So I just think we should be careful not to think about a hard edge. The department has finished their advice at a particular point in time when we put up a draft response. And obviously we're a little constrained, as always, in talking about the content of our draft response, which you're not going there, Senator. But I just think it's important to put that on the record just because of any sense that the clock has stopped from the department's point of view and it's fully in the realm of the Minister and Minister office. I just want to be cautious about drawing that inference from those responses, which we will provide on notice.
Thank you. Ms Connolly, you will be aware, I'm sure, that if we stacked up every report that the government has either failed to respond to or taken years to respond to, it would probably fill this room. And so there is a great deal of interest in the community to ensure that the drafting process and the approval process is proceeding at a pace that matches the urgency of the recommendations made. Thanks, Chair.